Imagine discovering a secret so profound that it changes how you see the most famous figure in history. A letter, tucked away for centuries, was written by someone who knew Jesus personally. Someone who saw him, spoke to him, and even held his lifeless body after the crucifixion. Why haven't we heard about this letter before? What was so controversial and shocking that history buried it? What, more importantly, does this reveal about the traditional interpretation of Jesus? This is the story of Joseph of Arimathea, a man of courage and mystery, and the letter he supposedly wrote that describes Jesus in ways that will leave you amazed and perhaps unsettled. To understand the importance of this letter, we need to start with Joseph himself, a figure shrouded in intrigue. Joseph wasn't your typical follower of Jesus. He was a wealthy, respected member of the Sanhedrin, the religious council that condemned Jesus to death. But unlike his peers, Joseph saw something extraordinary in Jesus. He believed in him quietly, secretly, because aligning with Jesus was dangerous. In those days, supporting someone seen as a threat to the Roman Empire and Jewish authorities could cost you everything: your status, your wealth, even your life. However, during Jesus' crucifixion, Joseph took an unprecedented step. He went to Pilate, the Roman governor, and asked for Jesus' body. This act was not just bold, it was risky. Handling the body of a condemned criminal was a social and religious taboo. But Joseph didn't care. He gave up his own tomb, a symbol of his wealth and legacy, to honor the man he believed was more than human. According to ancient manuscripts, Joseph wrote a detailed account of Jesus, his appearance, his personality, and the way he made people feel. It's not a story you'll find in the Bible or hear in Sunday sermons. It's hard to believe that we don't talk about this side of Jesus more, as it feels so real and personal in this letter. Some people hold the belief that the official biblical canon purposefully excluded it. Others believe the suppression occurred because it presented Jesus in a manner that didn't align with his purely divine image. Instead, the letter reveals Jesus as someone deeply human, a man with a calming presence, a voice that could soothe the most troubled soul, and eyes that seemed to look straight into your heart. Joseph of Arimathea's letter takes us into a world shrouded in intrigue, where every detail about Jesus feels both intimate and extraordinary. Preserved in ancient manuscripts and long debated by scholars, this letter presents an account of Jesus unlike anything found in the Gospels. It's a portrait so vivid, so deeply personal, that it challenges our understanding of one of the most influential figures in history. Let's start with what the letter reveals. Joseph describes Jesus with a richness and clarity that feels almost tangible. His words don't just portray Jesus as the Son of God, they reveal a man whose presence was profoundly human, yet unmistakably divine. He recounts details about Jesus' appearance, his mannerisms, and the way he carried himself. According to the letter, Jesus' eyes seemed to hold a light that pierced through even the darkest of hearts. His gaze wasn't just penetrating, it was comforting, as if he could see your deepest fears and sorrows, but offered peace instead of judgment. His voice, Joseph wrote, was unforgettable. It wasn't booming or forceful, but it carried a weight that silenced doubts. When Jesus spoke, it was as if every word came directly from the heart of God. His tone was soothing yet powerful, making even the most skeptical listener pause and reflect. Joseph also described Jesus' physical presence in ways that feel grounded and relatable. His face, marked by compassion, carried a quiet strength, as though he bore the weight of the world without resentment. He moved humbly, yet every step seemed purposeful, as if guided by a knowledge no one else could fathom. This depiction presents Jesus not as an unattainable figure, but as someone deeply connected to humanity. The letter recounts how being near Jesus was transformative. Burdens felt lighter and hope felt tangible. People who were anxious or broken found peace simply by standing in his presence. Joseph described Jesus as having an energy that drew people in, a kind of spiritual gravity. Being near him was like stepping into a calm after a storm, a rare stillness in a chaotic world. Even those who doubted him couldn't deny the effect he had. The most haunting part of Joseph's letter comes when he describes Jesus on the cross. He writes about the moment their eyes met, Joseph looking up at the crucified Jesus, expecting to see anger or despair. Instead, he saw mercy. Even in excruciating pain, Jesus radiated love. Joseph describes how this moment changed him forever. He saw a man who, despite betrayal and unimaginable suffering, refused to hate. It wasn't just Jesus' words or miracles that revealed his divinity. It was his ability to endure the worst humanity could offer and still embody forgiveness. This raw emotional account stands in stark contrast to the more formalized narratives in the canonical Gospels. It gives us a glimpse into the humanity of Jesus, making him feel closer, more real, and perhaps more challenging to accept. How does one reconcile such vulnerability with divine power? Historical accounts suggest the letter was part of apocryphal manuscripts, writings not included in the official biblical canon. These texts often contained ideas or perspectives that early church leaders deemed unnecessary, unreliable, or even dangerous. The letter's focus on Jesus' humanity may have been especially controversial. The church might have viewed this deeply personal depiction as disruptive during a time when it sought to emphasize Jesus' divinity. Some believe the church intentionally suppressed it, while others suggest centuries of persecution and conflict led to its loss. The letter's obscurity adds to the mystery. Unlike the Gospels, which were widely copied and distributed, Joseph's letter seems to have been preserved in limited circles. Perhaps Joseph never intended it for the masses, but rather as a private reflection, a personal testimony from someone deeply touched by Jesus. The process of assembling the Bible involved careful selection, with many texts left out for theological or political reasons. Could Joseph's letter be one of many hidden accounts that offer a fuller picture of Jesus? And yet, despite its obscurity, this letter survives as a testament to the profound impact Jesus had on those who knew him. It reminds us that history is never complete, and that we may only be scratching the surface of Jesus' information. What makes this letter so compelling isn't just its mystery. It's the way it brings Jesus closer to us. It invites us to see him not only as a teacher or savior, but as someone who understood what it means to be human. That's a truth that resonates across centuries, one that has the power to transform how we understand faith. One of the most compelling aspects of Joseph of Arimathea's letter is how it intertwines Jesus' humanity with his divinity, creating a portrayal that feels both deeply relatable and awe-inspiring. This duality, the ability to be fully human and fully divine, is at the heart of what makes Jesus such a profound and mysterious figure. Joseph's descriptions don't just focus on the miracles or teachings. They highlight a man who walked among people yet seemed to transcend every human limitation. Joseph begins by painting a vivid picture of Jesus' humanity. His descriptions show a man who understood the struggles of daily life, who felt hunger, pain, exhaustion, and sorrow, just as we do. Yet even in these shared experiences, Jesus stood out. Joseph recalls moments when Jesus' presence alone could calm a room. His humility was striking. He never sought recognition, despite his extraordinary wisdom and power. When Jesus interacted with people, he did so with a deep understanding of their emotions and fears. Joseph describes how Jesus could look at someone and seem to know their entire story. This wasn't just a surface-level kindness. It was an act of truly seeing people for who they were, their flaws and all, and still offering acceptance. Joseph's account of Jesus on the cross reinforces this humanity. The agony of crucifixion was a brutal, humiliating death, yet Jesus bore it with a grace that left even his enemies unsettled. Joseph's letter doesn't shy away from the raw pain of that moment, but it also reveals a man who chose to love even in the face of betrayal and death. If Jesus' humanity made him relatable, his divinity made him unforgettable. Joseph's letter describes Jesus as a figure of unmatched spiritual power, someone who didn't just teach about God, but embodied the presence of God. One of the most striking passages in the letter describes how Jesus' words had a way of resonating beyond the moment. Joseph writes that hearing Jesus speak was like planting seeds in your soul. The impact might not be immediate, but it grew over time, transforming how you saw the world. It wasn't just what Jesus said, it was how he said it. His voice exuded a serene authority, instilling a sense of eternal truth in every word. Even his silence had weight. Joseph recalls moments when Jesus didn't need to speak. His presence alone brought comfort to the grieving and hope to the hopeless. This was more than charisma or personality. It was a reflection of divinity that went beyond human understanding. What makes Joseph's account so fascinating is how it captures the perfect balance between Jesus' human experiences and his divine nature. He wasn't distant or untouchable. He was someone who walked the dusty streets, shared meals with friends, and wept at the loss of loved ones. At the same time, he performed miracles, forgave sins, and spoke with a wisdom that seemed to come from another realm. Joseph's letter gives us a glimpse into this tension. For example, when Jesus healed the sick, he didn't do it with a sense of grandeur. Instead, he approached healing as a natural extension of his compassion, a means to empathize with people's suffering and express his love for them. This blending of the ordinary with the extraordinary made Jesus' actions feel both miraculous and deeply personal. Perhaps the most striking element of Joseph's testimony is how it shows Jesus' humanity enhancing, not diminishing, his divinity. Jesus found strength in humility, power in service, and divinity in the deeply human act of loving others. This paradox is what made him so transformational. Joseph describes how people didn't just leave Jesus' presence feeling amazed, they left changed. This wasn't because they feared him or felt overpowered by him, but because they felt seen and understood. Even those who doubted him couldn't deny the impact he had on their hearts. This is what Joseph's letter invites us to reflect on, that Jesus' ability to be both human and divine is what makes him so accessible to us. His humanity reminds us that he understands our struggles. His divinity gives us hope that there's something greater guiding us through those struggles. Joseph's actions after the crucifixion demonstrate a bold, unwavering faith. Imagine the courage it took for him, a respected leader of the Sanhedrin, to openly claim Jesus' body for burial. This wasn't just a compassionate gesture, it was a public declaration of loyalty to someone the authorities had condemned. By stepping forward, Joseph risked his reputation, his safety, and perhaps even his life. This act of faith reminds us that transformation often requires bravery. Joseph's example challenges us to consider, how far are we willing to go for what we believe? In a world where it's easier to stay silent or conform, Joseph shows us that true faith is active. It calls us to take risks, even when the cost is high. In his letter, Joseph describes Jesus as someone whose presence alone could change lives. It wasn't just his words or miracles that inspired people, it was the way he made them feel seen and valued. Joseph writes that being near Jesus was like stepping into a light that illuminated your soul. This aspect of Jesus' character speaks to the transformative power of connection. Jesus didn't just preach about love, he lived it, offering his time and attention to everyone, from the outcasts to the powerful. His ability to connect deeply with others is a reminder that transformation often begins in relationships. By seeing others as Jesus did, through the lens of compassion and understanding, we too can become catalysts for change in their lives. Joseph's letter also emphasizes the simplicity and depth of Jesus' teachings. He spoke in ways that disarmed even the wisest thinkers, yet his messages resonated with ordinary people. He intended his words to transform, not to impress. For example, Joseph recalls how Jesus spoke of the kingdom of God not as a distant dream, but as something present, here and now. His teachings weren't just about following rules, they were about opening hearts. This redefines faith as something active and alive, not confined to rituals or doctrines, but rooted in how we live and treat others. What's striking is how Joseph portrays Jesus' ability to plant seeds of change in those who heard him. His words often left people pondering for days, slowly reshaping their understanding of themselves and their purpose. This reminds us that transformation doesn't always happen instantly. Sometimes it's a gradual process, one that requires patience, reflection, and a willingness to grow. One of the most profound themes in Joseph's letter is how Jesus transformed suffering into something redemptive. On the cross, Jesus endured unimaginable pain and humiliation, yet Joseph describes him as radiating love and mercy. Instead of cursing his tormentors, Jesus forgave them. Instead of despairing, he offered hope. This approach to suffering is both challenging and inspiring. It shows us that faith isn't about avoiding pain, it's about finding meaning within it. Joseph's account reminds us that transformation often happens in our darkest moments. We can grow and show love by handling hardship with grace like Jesus. For Joseph, witnessing Jesus' suffering was life-changing. It deepened his understanding of what it means to truly live with faith. It wasn't about holding on to power or status. It was about surrendering to a higher purpose, even when it hurt. What makes Joseph's letter so powerful is how it invites us to see faith not as something distant or unattainable, but as something deeply personal. Through his words, we encounter a Jesus who understood human struggles and who offered a path of transformation rooted in love and humility. If this story moved you, if it sparked questions, or if it inspired you to look deeper into the life and legacy of Jesus, consider supporting us by clicking the Super Thanks button below. You're helping us continue uncovering, sharing, and exploring these incredible stories that challenge, inspire, and transform lives. Joseph of Arimathea's letter is more than an ancient manuscript. It is a lens into a story that has shaped human history and continues to inspire billions. In his words, we see not just a Messiah of divine power, but a man of extraordinary compassion, a figure whose presence bridged the gap between heaven and earth. This letter challenges us to delve deeper, surpass the superficial understanding we've received, and contemplate the essence of living a life rooted in faith. Consider the moments depicted in the letter. The letter describes Jesus' gaze that seemed to pierce the soul, his voice that calmed the most restless hearts, and his mercy even in the face of suffering. These aren't just historical accounts, they're reminders of how one person's presence can change the world. What does it mean for us to carry that legacy forward? How can we embody even a fraction of that compassion, love, and humility in our own lives? At its core, Joseph's account shows us a faith that is alive, dynamic, and deeply personal. It's not about rituals or doctrines alone. It's about transformation. It's about seeing the humanity in others, offering hope in the darkest moments, and choosing love even when it costs us everything. This letter, with all its mystery and beauty, calls us to live with greater compassion, to seek deeper understanding, and to approach life with the same courage and love that Joseph saw in Jesus. It's a reminder that faith isn't static, it's alive, calling us forward, urging us to grow and become something greater. Thanks for watching. Join our community by subscribing to this channel. Until the next video.